Good afternoon, everyone watching us live today, and welcome to our third annual In Conversation With. We're so happy that you can join us today, and we're joined today by Richard Lancaster, who has been volunteering for Greenpeace for over 30 years now, and he's a software engineer by trade, but dedicates much of his free time to campaigning and delivering talks for non-governmental environmental organizations. And originally joining the anti-whaling campaign for Greenpeace, he's been part of Greenpeace since 1980. And he has extensive experience in campaigning and is convinced that climate change is the biggest challenge we face today, and hopes that his work with Greenpeace will lead to a better future. So I'll pass it on to Richard to give a quick introduction about himself, and we hope you enjoy this In Conversation With.
Hi, thanks for that introduction. Yes, so as I say, as the introduction said, I'm involved with Greenpeace, and this morning I'd like to share some thoughts about climate change. And we're going to start by viewing a short video just to kind of set the scene. So I'm going to do that without further ado. I'm just going to go in and we're going to have a quick look at this short video here.
This is urgent!
Industrial meat is making the people on the planet sick. It's destroying our forests,
Polluting our water.
Causing climate change.
And being mean to animals.
We need to do something quick.
I'll trust the team to sort this mess. Team plant.
The grown-ups aren't stepping up. The world needs you now.
We need to fix it.
Got it. We need to investigate.
It's not looking good.
We need to be brave.
We need to be skilled. We need to be confident.
And we need to get the word out. We're calling for a change around the world. We need to eat less meat.
How are you going to do
And that's where you come in. We can't do this alone. Can you help us?
So that just sets the scene and gives you an idea. And what I'm going to do now is to just give a short talk about this particular subject. So I'm just going to just set up my screen, and essentially we're going to be focusing on the impact that climate change, the links between climate change and industrial meat production. So we've got, I'll just check that you can, hang on a moment. Let me just get that right. Okay. Okay, so the Amazon, which I guess many of you know quite a lot about the Amazon. It is the largest tropical rainforest in the world. Covers more than 5 million square kilometers and is spread across 9 countries. So to put that in perspective, it's as large as the whole of the United States or Europe, and the map shows that there. And the first thing that we need to understand about the rainforest is that it supports a huge variety of animals and plants. And one of the key things that we're facing in the world at the moment is the loss of biodiversity. And there's just a few pictures there, give you a flavor of the variety of animals and plants. 60,000 plant species, 1,000 bird species, 300 different mammals. And what a lot of people forget is that the Amazon is home to over 20 million people as well. And when we're talking about biodiversity, you've got some of those pictures there. And I'll just zoom in on one of those for a moment, the poison dart frog. And you may have seen these. I'm sure you've seen pictures of them. You may have seen them in other places. But even within just that little niche area of poison dart frog, there ain't one poison dart frog. There's dozens of poison dart frogs, and this is the beauty of nature and the beauty of biodiversity. And as I say, also within the Amazon, we have a lot of 20 million people, but about 160,000 of those are indigenous people. They're the original inhabitants of the Amazon, about 500 different tribes. And the truth of the matter is that these indigenous peoples are as much in danger as all of the wildlife in the Amazon as well. They've been living in harmony with nature for many thousands of years, but because of the changes that are taking place in the Amazon at the moment, their livelihoods, their very existence is being threatened every day. So what are the threats? Well, the Amazon is being burnt and cut down. And this is a picture here, just shows you the sort of devastation that's taking place. The top 2/3 of the photograph show a hugely deforested area where the Amazon has been either clear cut or burnt. And the bottom strip there shows what it should look like, with a vast variety of trees and plants. And why is it being cut down? Well, first of all, it's being cut down for its wood, and trees are being cut down. And some of these are 1,000 years old, and they're being cut down to make disposable items, toilet tissue and paper tissues and so on, things that will be used a moment and then thrown away. And the Amazon is being destroyed at a frightening rate. And you may have heard these figures before. People quote them all the time. An area the size of 2 football pitches every single minute, every 60 seconds, an area the size of 2 football pitches. But it's even then hard to get that into perspective, because an area the size of 2 football pitches every minute actually equates to an area of 8,100 square kilometers every year. And even that might be difficult to comprehend. So I've got a little comparison here. This is a map sort of part of the southwest of England where some of us live. So down in the bottom corner, you can see the Severn Estuary and you can see Bristol. And up in the top right, we're almost over to Northampton. Top left is Worcester. That there is a square that's 90 kilometers by 90 kilometers, i.e. 8,100 square kilometers. That's the sort of area of Amazon rainforest that we're losing. That was the amount that was lost in 2019. It is really frightening. So we know they're cutting it down to get the wood, but what else? Well, there's been a huge increase in ranching in the Amazon. The Amazon is now home to more cattle than it is to people. Just there, you can just see. So this is a typical scene that you see in large parts of the Amazon now, cowboys with cattle. So a large part of it is that, but it's also being cut down to grow 2 very popular and very versatile plants. The top one there, you may not know what it looks like when it's growing. That is oil palm, and it's what gives us palm oil. And the bottom looks a bit like peas, but it's actually soya beans. And these are the 2 main crops. So apart from the ranching, the 2 main crops are oil palm and soya. And of course, oil palm, we now find I think it's estimated that something like 50% of all of the products bought in supermarkets these days contain palm oil. Everything from toothpaste to peanut butter to soap. It's a very versatile product that can be put in. It makes your soap come out of these containers. It's added to lots and lots of different foodstuffs and other products. And of course, the bottom picture shows soya, and soya is a large part of a number of people's diets. Lots of vegetarians and vegans consume a fair amount of soya. So you might think, well, okay, is it all those vegetarians and vegans that are the cause of the problem then? Is it them that's eating all this soya and they're the problem? But no, because of course, the amount that's actually consumed by humans in their diet directly is quite small. The majority of the soya is going into animal feed. And in Britain, a large part of the soya that we import, something like 90%, is used for animal feed. A large part goes to feed chickens like this, and also pigs. So the soya is going to produce meat as well. So we've got the ranching producing meat, beef. We've got the soya producing chickens and pigs. And the fact of the matter is that once you cut down the forest and you start growing soya or oil palm, you've destroyed the biodiversity. The top picture there shows the forest as it should be in the background, and then you can see that in the foreground, it's all been replaced by soya. And of course, there's no home for all of the variety of birds and mammals and insects that were living in the forest when you've just got field upon field, mile upon mile, or kilometer upon kilometer of soya or oil palm. And the bottom shows, you know, the huge areas, the huge, I mean, you could call them fields, but they're far bigger than any field that any of us will have seen. And combine harvesters in a sort of a V shape there, cutting down the crop. So why? But that's all right. But why are we so worried about the link between that and climate change then? We can understand, well, you know, the animals, but how does it affect the climate? Well, the truth of the matter is that we need trees. The trees absorb carbon dioxide. And I should just address one little thing here. A lot of people say, oh, well, you know, if we cut down all the trees, we're going to suffocate because there won't be any oxygen. That isn't the problem. And although people talk about the Amazon being the lungs of the planet, a more realistic way of describing it is as the thermostat for the planet. It has a modifying effect on the planet. So the trees growing lock up carbon in their plant fiber. If we cut down the trees and we burn them, we release that CO2. And of course, CO2 contributes to climate change. What happens is that the sun's rays hit the planet, and whereas some of it would be radiated out, when we increase the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, then less of it gets radiated, more of it gets bounced back to warm the planet. And the net result of that is more extreme weather. And it might be nice to say, well, if we were living in Bristol and we had a more Mediterranean climate, that would be quite nice. But of course, climate change doesn't work like that. What actually happens is you don't get nice, equal, slightly warmer weather so that we don't need to go abroad for our holidays. What you get is you get heat waves, you get droughts, you get hurricanes, wildfires, ice caps melting, and you get flooding. So you get lots of extreme weather. So what can we do about it? Well, the first thing we can do is we can start considering our purchasing. And as I've said, oil palm and the trees for wood and the soya are the three of the key things which are causing the deforestation. So you can start off by looking for sustainable palm oil products. Look for these logos. The second one there is the sustainable soya, and the bottom one you can see at the bottom of that pack, the Forestry Stewardship Council. So you can look out for those things. The second thing you can do is to think about your own carbon footprint. You know, cycle rather than using your car. Make sure you recycle so that less new stuff's produced. Keep your electricity usage down. Turn down your thermostat. Take a shower instead of a bath, and eat more plant-based vegetables. You know, vegetables and fruit. And eat seasonal, and eat local if you can. Those all help. Now, I don't know, Anish, whether you want to share one of the pledges now, or do you want to do that at the end? Sorry, I should check that with you.
Oh, no, not to worry. Just thought that this would be a good kind of intermission to talk about how some of the viewers can actually see their own carbon footprint. So two very useful websites are the World Wildlife Foundation, where you can put in some of your habits. So if you drive to work, if you have a meat-based diet, then yeah, you can log in, put down your habits and find out how much your carbon footprint is, and it gives you some tips on how to reduce this. And another really good website is geeky.com. So that's GIKI.com. And you can put in, as you were saying earlier, looking at some of the ingredients that we buy, such as peanut butter. You can scan the barcodes and you can see whether some of the ingredients in there are sustainable or not, or whether it's sustainable palm oil. And this are just a few steps in order to make some of the life choices that we make a little bit easier, and in taking proactive steps into reducing our carbon footprint by informing us on how to do so. So yeah, just two useful websites for our viewers to have a look at.
Thanks, Anish. So I've been talking about plants being an important part. Why do I keep banging on about that? Well, the truth of the matter is, if we take a look at this, we can see, if we look at a typical North American diet, so that's the United States, Canada, heavy consumption of meat. It takes roughly 2 football pitches of land to feed one person, because of how inefficient grazing animals are as a way of producing protein for humans. If you instead had a plant-based diet, those same 2 football pitches area of land could feed 14 people. So 2 football pitches for one person, 2 football pitches for 14 people. The truth of the matter is that livestock contributes as much to climate change as all the cars, trucks, planes, trains and ships on Earth combined. 14% is purely livestock. Now, you can get involved yourself. There's things that you can do, those websites that Anish just mentioned. There's also lots of campaigning organizations that are working here. Greenpeace down the bottom there, there's Extinction Rebellion. There's organizations that are purely working with indigenous peoples, like Survival. There's other organizations that are concentrating on planting trees, and there's others that are concentrating on reducing meat consumption. Now, some of these organizations are more radical or extreme than others, depending on your definition of extreme. Obviously, Extinction Rebellion and Greenpeace have done things which are, at the limits of what's legal. And one of the things that you might consider if you're getting involved in the environmental movement is, what are the ethics of protest? And I've just put up 3 photographs here. Picture dating back to the turn of the century before last, moving from the 18th to the 19th to the 20th century, the suffragettes. Then during the 20s and 30s, the civil rights movement in the United States, and more recently, the environmental movement protesting against, in this particular photograph, protesting against the oil companies. And you might like to consider, is it ever permissible to break the law if you firmly believe that your cause is just? And then finally, as people of faith, and I'm actually a Christian, but obviously I've been invited to talk to your Hindu group today, but you might want to think about, what the impact is on our faith. And there's a number of books that have been written by Christians and others who are people of faith, talking about, is God green? Or how does it affect and impact on your faith? Are we stewards of the creation? And in that case, what responsibility do we have to act to mitigate and to against climate change? So that's a very quick run through. I'll stop my screen share now. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Richard, for that very, very insightful presentation. I'm sure our audience have a few questions to ask us following that note. Just to fill in there, it's a really, really interesting point on how people can take climate action, and especially urging the government to take bold and ambitious actions indeed. A few more pointers that I came across and would love to share are using energy wisely, and also making sure that your energy provider, such as EDF or British Gas, do get their energy from renewable sources. And as you've highlighted on numerous occasions, eating sustainably and eating for a climate sustainable planet, making sure your commute is green. So if you can, cycle to work. And I think this is one of the most important actions, consuming less and wasting less and enjoying life more. So yeah, we can now just kind of discuss a few questions here and there that may have popped up from the audience. But one question that comes to mind is, so a lot of vegetarians kind of are in between becoming vegan and taking those actions. But can you highlight a few of information that you know about the dairy industry in the UK as such?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, a lot of people are moving and reducing their consumption of dairy. Dairy industry does have a big impact in terms of meat consumption in the UK. Then we don't import any meat. I mean, from the Amazon, we don't import meat from there. Most of our beef is locally grown, either in the UK or Ireland. But obviously, we do still have quite a big dairy industry, and alternatives. I mean, it's interesting. I put my hand up. I'm not a vegan. I'm a vegetarian, so I should just point that out. So I do eat some dairy. We What we're finding is that there are increasingly alternatives, and the alternatives are getting better. And the strange part is that some, I would never eat meat alternatives. They don't appeal to me. But there are some vegetarians and vegans who quite like the idea of having something that looks like a piece of meat, but they know isn't. So that's quite an interesting thing, that some quite like these meat alternatives. Other people find the whole idea of trying to make something look as much like meat as possible quite a revolting idea. So that's quite an interesting one. But I think also that we're not, even if everyone reduced their meat consumption without cutting it out altogether, it will make a huge difference. So, we've talked about vegetarians and vegans, but the other term that's coming in far more is flexitarian, where people eat meat maybe once or twice a week, just not every day, but it becomes a treat. And in fact, I'm not going to condemn those people, because if the quality of that meat is better, that the animals are raised in a caring way, and so the quality is better and the animal husbandry is better, then that's still a lot better than mass-produced meat that's fed on soya imported from the Amazon that's been chopped down. So, if people are finding the journey hard, then go as far as you can along the journey. You don't have to be, it's not all or nothing. It doesn't have to be. If we all edge towards it, then it'll make a big difference.
I think that's a great point you've highlighted there, and it is a case of and or for people who do find it a bit tricky to transition into separate diets. It takes a big moment of change. I believe I had, and it takes making that connection. But as you say, there's an and an or. And one thing that I did read is kings and the history behind meat is, it used to be very much a prestigious honor to have meat, and it used to be very much like fit for the rich. but the way it's become now, it's part of our diet. People consume meat on a day-to-day basis, and this overconsumption has caused such a depletion in the resources that we have on this planet in order to sustain some of these diets. And we're kind of, David Attenborough states this as well, we're living on a planet that's 1.5 times the size that we have in order to sustain ourselves. And yeah, definitely reducing our consumption and being more proactive in the things that we do have and do consume, such as seasonal produce, making sure that if we are being vegetarians, our diet is not just avocados every day from South America. And yeah, education is one of the most important attributes, asking the questions, having these topics of discussion. So do appreciate that you've come here today to inform us all on the steps that we can take. So one of the questions that's come from the audience as well is sustainable palm oil really sustainable, and are the alternatives which have shorter or long-term impact? Sorry, are there alternatives which have a shorter long-term impact that we could be using instead? I'll just change that around. So is sustainable palm oil really sustainable, and are the alternatives better and in the short term, or could we be using alternatives instead?
Okay, yeah, no, I understand the question. It's a very good question, actually. Okay, the first thing about palm oil I should say is that it's an amazing crop. Okay, so first of all, where it's grown, it doesn't effectively have seasons. So directly you've harvested, you can replant. So that's the key thing. The yields of palm oil, as compared with other things like I don't know, oilseed rape or sunflower oil or one of the others, the yields from palm oil are significantly higher. So an alternative isn't to plant something other than palm oil to get the same amount of oil, because you just wouldn't. You'd need significantly bigger area if you were trying to replace palm oil with oilseed rape or one of the others. So palm oil is incredibly versatile, but we probably don't need to be consuming as much as we are. There are proper certification regimes, but how well they're policed is obviously always a question. And we know that people in the Amazon who are trying to investigate and check on these things are quite often intimidated and so on. So that's another part of it. But the other thing is that in my little talk, I showed some examples of what palm oil is used in. And there are certain foods like peanut butter where, yeah, probably palm oil would be difficult to replace. But the other thing I showed was plastic bottles of liquid soap. And, you know, today we're talking about climate change, but on another occasion, I could be talking to you about the evils of single-use plastic. And, you know, to me, that sort of liquid soap in a plastic throwaway container is a problem, and that a bar of soap that doesn't contain any or as much palm oil, because the palm oil makes it much more runny, doesn't need to be runny if it's in a bar of soap, would be a better alternative. And so, you know, manufacturers have started to put palm oil into a lot of things that it doesn't need to be in, just to make them more convenient like liquid soap and so on. So probably worldwide we use more palm oil than we need to, and we're growing it in places that we shouldn't really be growing it in. So there are alternatives. Some of those other areas may not produce such big yields, but they wouldn't involve destroying the Amazon. So there's a combination of things, reducing the use where it doesn't need to be, it's not an essential part, and also strengthening the regimes that certify sustainable palm oil. So it's a combination of things that need to come in order to protect the rest of the Amazon.
Thank you once again, Richard. And I think one important factor that you have highlighted is lots and lots of companies have kind of taken away some attributes that we used to have in the past, like using a bar of soap to make life more convenient for us. So it's a matter of us taking that kind of next step forward to making sure that we do input a bit more time into things that are going to have a better future for the generations in front of us. Another really important question that I've got is, seeing as we are Hindu Climate Action and we are a faith-based group, we wanted to ask you that how do you find faith ties into your desire for climate change? Because I know you mentioned that you are very active in the
Yep.
church as well.
Yeah, I'm. Just to explain, I'm a Christian. I belong to a Methodist church where I live in Nailsea, just outside of Bristol. And it is an important part. I believe that we are stewards, that we do have a responsibility, that we didn't inherit the planet from our parents. We are holding it in trust for our children, and that we have a responsibility to pass it on in a good shape to them. I have grandchildren now, and I wonder what sort of planet, what sort of earth they will be inhabiting when I'm long gone. So faith does have a large part of it. The church I belong to, a number of the people within our congregation do feel that environmentalism is completely meshes with their faith and is a key part of our responsibility, that our service should be part of our service should be that. So for me, yes, it's a key part. I can't say that for all Christians. There have been other Christians who feel that, the planet's just been given to us and we do with it what we like. That isn't my belief, and increasingly I would say it's not the belief of many others in Christians, and I think that's spilling over into I think many other faiths are also, perhaps some of them have been much more in harmony with nature than Christianity has. Christianity doesn't particularly have that's not true. If we go back to somebody like St. Francis of Assisi, then we can see somebody in harmony with nature. But there was a big period of time when maybe we weren't. But I think we're moving back that way now, and I think it is a strong thread throughout faith. And I mean, and the other thing is that we've talked a lot about sort of animals and plants and things, and we did talk briefly about the indigenous people, but the truth of the matter is the people who will suffer most, certainly initially, from climate change are going to be those who are the most vulnerable, the poorest in society, the least resilient in society. And again, the Christian teaching and that of many other faiths says that we have a responsibility to our brothers and sisters, and especially to those who are vulnerable, poor, sick, or least able to help themselves in the environment and in the situation they find them. So I think that's a strong driver as well, that we have to recognize that the people who are going to suffer most from climate change are the poorest and most vulnerable in society. And there's lots of aspects of that, but yeah, so that's why I think it's important.
Just wrap up what you said very well. Funny enough, you mentioned Assisi. So the Hindu Declaration at Assisi in 1986 actually stressed that humans are part of nature and undoubtedly linked to everything else on this earth. And God is revealed through the graded scale of evolution, of which animals are just one element. And even though when we are part of this element and we share this earth not only with ourselves, but with everything, all living beings as such. And I think a lot of Hindus can say this as well, but the belief in karma should encourage us to accept responsibility for our actions, including how we treat our environment. So a lot of what you have said does definitely tie in with faith, and it follows on to my last and final question for you. You've been doing this work for a few years now, and have you found that climate change awareness has changed over the past 10 years?
Yes, I mean, I think it has, and certainly among young people. I go into schools a lot, give talks, and the response to questions and answers and their knowledge is certainly stronger than it was, and I think they do understand. One of the problems, though, is that it seems like too big a problem, and it's almost like, well, what can I do? I'm only one person. To which I'd say that, the social anthropologist Margaret Mead said that the quote goes something like this: you know, don't believe that a small group of committed people can't change the world. Indeed, nothing else ever has. And effectively, what it means is that, all of the great movements have started with a small group of dedicated, committed people. And I think that we can. And I think, only yesterday, the new president of the United States, and obviously the United States is a key player in anything that's going to happen about climate change. United States, their climate footprint is massive compared, if you compare somebody in North America with somebody in Africa, there's, the climate, the carbon footprint is like 25 times as big or something. So, but Joe Biden phoned Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson is going to be hosting the COP discussions, which were put off from last year because of COVID. They're going to take place towards the end of this year. And the fact that, the United States has rejoined the Paris Accord, and the fact that Boris Johnson has made the right noises about it. Obviously, there's a big step from saying things and actually doing them, but there's the politicians and people in the public in general, I think, are far more aware now and understand. And I think that's been brought home by the fact that people know that 18 of the 20 years of the 21st century have been the hottest on record. People have seen people who, floods that were only supposed to happen once in 100 years are happening once every 3 or 4 years now. So people can see the changes themselves, so I don't, less people need convincing. There's fewer climate deniers. And to be honest, the climate deniers are the same people who believe that the Earth's flat, or that Hillary Clinton was an alien. They're just, hopefully they can be put on one side and the sane people can tackle the problem.
Thanks once again, Richard. I think you've done a great job at raising awareness as well on your part for all our viewers today. And if everyone who's been watching us felt inspired, there's our page, hinduklimateaction.org, where you can make your climate pledge. So if you log into our website and if you go onto our projects, there we have a climate pledge where you can choose to take further action. And yeah, your selfless acts will be an inspiration. And on there, you can take different pledges, such as reducing your fast fashion, making changes to your diet, as we've definitely highlighted today, and taking pledges on your transport, so how you get to work, or even just traveling day to day. And we also have a competition going on in partnership with NHSF, where you can you can either decide to cook a vegan meal, you can upcycle something, or you can watch a climate change documentary. There's plenty of them out there. And for every point that you get, We Can Do Climate Action is going to take a pledge to plant 2 trees, depending on how many points you score. And these are just some of the steps that you can take. There's more resources out there on our website. And if you do have any more questions, feel free to post them on our YouTube comment section, and we will do our best to answer them. So I'm just going to pass it back to Richard now, who can finalize everything that has been saying, and just give him final remarks. Over to you, Richard.
Hi, thanks. So I just harking back to one of the points that you made about meat being a luxury. Yeah, when I was a young person, chicken was one of the most expensive, and it was a luxury meat. And chicken is now one of the cheapest meats that you can buy. And the reason is deforestation in the Amazon. There's a direct link, no question. In terms of thoughts to go away with, yes, reducing our meat consumption is a key element to things that we personally can do. Sometimes you feel helpless. It's very difficult to think how you can have an impact. That's just one way, and it's a way that we can all do. And surprisingly, quite often doing the right thing has some pain that you have to accept. But actually, in this case, doing the right thing can be a lot healthier as well. There's good evidence that suggests that vegetarians and vegans' life expectancy is a little bit longer than meat eaters. So you can help yourself and you can help the planet. So that's the message I'd leave you with. So, and I thank you very much for inviting me to join you today.
Thank you very, very, very much once again, Richard. And I think a lot of our viewers today already know the benefits that come with having a vegetarian diet. Not only is our body kind of adapted to eating vegetarian diets, we will leave a world that's much better for our future generations, as you've highlighted today.